Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi Aleph, Daf 91 of Masechta Pesachim. Yesterday was hard, right? Yeah, today's taka very nice, Lamaise. So, we start with a new Mishnah. It talks about different people that you could slaughter the korban pesach for, different people that are derabanan. What if a fellow is in jail? Can you slaughter a korban pesach for a fellow who is in jail that they promised that Lamaise will come out of jail that day? What do you guys think? Then we get on to a new Mishnah and we discuss, can you slaughter a pesach for just one fellow? What about for just one pesach, for just one fellow? And then we discuss the chiyuv of women with regard to korban pesach through a machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon. Let us jump in. We are going to begin on Daf Tzadi Amud Beis. Last word on the entire page. Ha'onein, a fellow who's an onein. Who could tell me what an onein is? An onein, as we learned about in Masechta Brachos, way back when, 1,000,000 years ago, is somebody who a relative has passed away and has not yet been buried. That is an onein. So now, as we're going to learn, are we going to learn? Maybe we're going to learn. Actually, I don't know if we're going to learn. So I'll tell you. An onein, there's aninus yom. There's a difference between aninus yom and aninus laila, right? Being an onein during the day and being an onein at night. Being onein during the day is mida oraisa. So if you're an onein is not chayiv in mitzvahs, so he would not be included in the korban pesach. However, at night, aninus is only midirabanan, and therefore, when you can eat korban pesach at night, at that point you're only owning dirabanan, and therefore the rabbis waived the dirabanan so that you'll be able to eat korban pesach, and therefore an onein can be included in the shchitas korban pesach. If you have a person who is uncovering some kind of a pile because there's somebody trapped in there. Now, the question is, you don't know if you're going to find the person alive or not. So it's kilu a suffix if you're going to be tamei or not. If you find him dead, you'll likely be tamei. If you find him alive, then you won't. So since we don't know, you can include him it's a suffix, so you can include him in the shchita. If you have a fellow who is in jail and they said, "Look, buddy, you're going to get free today," but at the moment he's still in jail. If you have somebody who's not well or is azaken, is old, as we've been learning till now, that a chole and a zaken are people who would be considered shalola ochla, people who are unable to eat a kazayis of korban pesach. Yet, if they are able to eat a kazayis of korban pesach, shochten alein al period. So you can slaughter the korban pesach. You can include them. Okay, in all of these cases. However, in all of these cases, we would not take the risk and slaughter the korban pesach if they are the only one that you're slaughtering it for. If you're slaughtering a korban pesach for just one person, that person should not be any of these suffix. They can be included in a group, and we can assume, we can assume that they will be good to go to eat the korban pesach, but you wouldn't slaughter for them alone. And as Rashi explains, sort of the reasons for all the different ones, right? When it comes to the onein, maybe it'll end up becoming tamei. When it comes to the mefakeach hasagal, maybe the person will end up, he'll find him dead. Maybe the person won't get out of jail. Maybe the sick person won't be feeling up to it that night. So therefore, don't take the chance and slaughter korban pesach for them alone, but they can be included in a group. Because we're concerned that it might not work out, and then you have a korban pesach that was slaughtered just for them, and it will end up being pasul. Now, if something ended up happening, they'll still be parted from doing pesach sheni. So, for example, if let's take as an example the person who's in jail. So you slaughter a korban pesach for him, right? Because he was supposed to get out of jail. So at the time that, that's fine. Well, let's take the chole maybe. Maybe that's a good example. The chole at the time that you slaughter the korban pesach, he was able to eat. He was capable of eating a kazayis. So you included him in the korban pesach, and he was capable of eating kazayis. So at the time of Shechita and at the time of Zrika, at the time of all of these inyanim, it was done b'kashrus. So therefore, he's yotzei chiyuv. Now, lemaise, when it came time to eat it, he wasn't well enough to eat it. But since at the time that the korban pesach was slaughtered, he was good to go. So he doesn't have to bring a pesach sheni. Chutz min ha'mefakeach bagal shu tamei mitchila. So the exception out of all these listed in the Mishnah is somebody who was, searching for somebody in some kind of a pile, that if it turns out that that the person was found dead, so then already at the time that the Shechita's korban pesach happened, he was already dead because he was already over the pile and making an ohel over the pile. So, at that point, if the person was found dead, and the assumption is that he was already dead at the time that he was searching, so that means that at the time of Shechita's korban pesach, the searcher was already tamei, which means that he would have to do pesach sheni. But all the other ones at the time that the Shechita's korban pesach happened, they were tahor and they were kosher, so they would not have to do pesach sheni. Amar Rabba by Rav Huna, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo shanu ela beis ha'asurin de'akum. When we say that you would not slaughter a korban pesach for somebody who is in jail, meaning you wouldn't slaughter a korban pesach where there's only one participant and that participant is currently in jail but he's supposed to get out. So the Mishnah said we would not slaughter a korban pesach for him alone, but he could join a different group. That's only if he's in a non-Jewish jail. Aval beis asurin to Yisrael, but if he's in a Jewish jail, shochtim b'fnei atzmo, you can even slaughter the korban pesach for him. Rashi explains there could be situations where a person could be in Jewish jail. Maybe if he owes money, or if he's married to somebody that we don't want him to be married to, or if he hurt somebody and then we're trying to figure out if the person's going to survive or not. There are different cases where there's Jewish jail as well. So if he's in Jewish jail and the Jewish wardens said that he's going to be free by the time Pesach comes, so then you would even be able to slaughter korban pesach where he is the sole participant, since if the Yidden said he's going to be free, so then you can assume that he's going to be free, and you can slaughter Pesach for him alone. Since they promised him, since the Jewish wardens promised him he's going to be free, so he's going to be free. The Chsiv, as the pasuk says, Sheiris Yisrael, the remnants of Israel, lo yaisu avla, lo yidabu chazav. They won't do crookedness and they won't speak lies. And therefore, if they say that this fellow is going to be free, he's going to be free. You can slaughter korban pesach for him alone. When we say that if it's a non-Jewish jail, so then you would not slaughter korban pesach for him alone. That's only if the non-Jewish jail is outside of Beis Pagi, which we learned about the other day. It's like the last part of Jerusalem. So meaning if the jail is outside of Jerusalem, so then we can't slaughter korban pesach for this fellow alone, because maybe he won't end up getting out of jail. Aval lifnei milchamos Beis Pagi. But if the jail is within Jerusalem, well then shochten olav, even if it's a non-Jewish jail, you could still slaughter the korban pesach for this fellow alone. Bifnei atzmo, my taima efshir da'am tulei v'achilei, because worse comes to worse, you can always just take the korban pesach and bring it to him in jail, since it's in Yerushalayim and he can eat a dart in anyways. So even if it's a non-Jewish jail, I don't know if this is only if he was promised that he was going to get out. So then ki'ilu, you could slaughter korban pesach for him, and worse comes to worse, you could just bring it to him in jail if for whatever reason they don't let him out. Or maybe even a fellow who's not supposed to get out of jail, you could bring the korban pesach to him because he's in Yerushalayim. I don't know. So we said that all of these examples in the Mishnah, if for whatever reason they ended up being unable to eat the korban pesach that night, they would not have to bring a pesach sheni. The exception being the fellow who's digging in a pile looking for somebody. If the person ends up being found dead, so then the fellow who was searching would have to bring korban pesach, because at the pesach sheni, because at the time that the pesach was slaughtered, the Maise, he was already tamei, since he was searching, he was making an ohel mistama over this pile. So now, Amar Rabbi Bar Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Loshanu Elagal Agul. That's specifically a round pile where he would have to do pesach sheni, because he was limafreya, he was already tamei. Aval aruch, but if it was a rectangular, a long pile, patur milasos pesach sheni, he would not need to do pesach sheni because because I'll say that he was still pure, he was still tahor at the time of the shchita. Okay, I guess if it's a round pile, so then somehow you would necessarily be making an oil over the mace, but if it was a long pile, then maybe not, and therefore maybe at the time of the shchita korban pesach he was still tahor, and therefore he wouldn't have to do pesach sheni. Tanya Nam Yoch, we also learn in a brisa like this. Reb Shimon Penosh Reb Yochanan ben Broka Omer Mefakeach Begal Itim Patur Itim Chayiv, that a fellow who is rummaging around in a pile looking for somebody and he finds him dead, sometimes he will be chayav to do pesach sheni, sometimes he will be potter from doing pesach sheni. Ketzad, what does this mean? Gal ogul v'nimtzeis tumatachtov chayav. If it was a round pile and there was a corpse found inside of it, then he would have to do pesach sheni. Gal aruch v'nimtzeis tumatachtov potter ematar hay b'shashchita. If it was a long pile, if it was a rectangular long pile, and there was a corpse found in there, he would be potter from doing pesach sheni, because you can argue that maybe at the time that the korban pesach was slaughtered, he was still pure. Nu Mishnah in Shochten es pesach ala yochid div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that you may not slaughter a korban pesach for just one participant. Rabbi Yossi matir. Rabbi Yossi says you may. You may slaughter a korban pesach even for just one participant. V'afilu chabur shameya she'enon yichol le'echol kazayis ain't shochten alein. And guess what, says Rabbi Yossi? If you have a group that's even 100 people, lots of people, but there isn't enough meat on this korban pesach that everybody in the group will be able to get a kazayis, well then you will not be able to slaughter korban pesach for them. So Rabbi Yossi says you're allowed to slaughter a korban pesach for one person, right? And he'll be able to eat a kazayis, and that's fine. But Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to slaughter korban pesach for just one person. Rabbi Yossi says sure you can. And not only that, but better to have a korban pesach with one person than a korban pesach with 100 people, but they won't be able to get a kazayis. And you cannot make a chabura for the korban pesach that consists of a combination of women, slaves, and minors. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, from where do we get this concept that you may not slaughter a korban pesach for just one participant? Tamulomer, the pasuk says, Lo sucha lizbach es pesach be'achad divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That the pasuk says that you're unable to slaughter the korban pesach be'achad sharecha, in one of your gates. So he learns be'achad means one, for one person, kilu. That you're unable to slaughter korban pesach for just one participant. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi yachid v'yachol la'ochlo shochtin olav. If you have one fellow and he's able to eat the whole thing himself, the whole korban himself, so you could slaughter the korban pesach for him, no problem. But if there's 10 participants and they wouldn't all be able to get a kazayis, well then don't slaughter the korban pesach on them. Rabbi Yossi, what does Rabbi Yossi do with the fact that the pasuk says Lo sucha lizbach es a pasach be'achad, from which Rabbi Yehuda learns that don't slaughter korban pesach for just one participant? So mibayle lechad Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Yossi learns out from that, like Rabbi Shimon learns from it. What does Rabbi Shimon learn? Titania, as we learn in the Brisa, Rabbi Shimon Omer, minayin lezovech as pischo bebamas yochid v'shas isra abamos shubelo saise. How do I know that if a fellow slaughters a korban pesach on a bamas yochid v'shas isra abamos, that it's a losaisa? What in the world does that mean? What's a bama? Who could tell me what a bama is? A bama is an altar that is built outside of either the Beis Hamikdash or the Mishkan, whatever they were working with in those days. That's what a bama is. Now, there are certain times when you're allowed to make bamas and certain periods when you're not allowed to make bamas. Right now, you're not allowed to make bamas. However, there were times when you were. So, as Ashi explains, when the tabernacle was in Shiloh, you were not allowed to make your own private altars. When there was a Beis Hamikdash, you were unable to make your own private altars. However, between when Shiloh stopped and the Beis Hamikdash was built, you were allowed to make your own private altars. And on those private altars, you were allowed to offer things like nidarim and nidavos. If you kind of just said, hey, I want to offer a korban to the Eibishter, you could sacrifice the korban and burn it on the bama if it was a period when you were allowed to make your own private altars. Now, says Rav Reb Shimon that if a person at a time when you were not allowed to make a bama, so for example, when like the Mishkan was in Shiloh or during the Beis Hamikdash, and this fellow made his own altar and he offered his korban pesach therein, so how do we know that he won't be chayiv karis for shchutei chutz, for slaughtering a korban outside of the Beis Hamikdash? And Rashi explained, builds on it a little more. It says dafka before this mashkitas pesach, whatever it is. Reb Shimon says that you'll dafka only be over on a mitzvahs lo saseh. How do we know that? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says lo sucha lizbachas pesach be'achad sharecha. It says that you cannot offer the korban pesach be'achad sharecha yochel av b'shas heter abamos kain. So is it possible that even when bamos are permitted, you would be over on a lav? Talmud Lomar be'achad sharecha. It says in one of your gates, lo armu ela b'shah shekol yisod nechnasim b'shar echad. When we say that lo sucha lizbachas it's a pasach be'achad sharecha, that you're not allowed to offer the korban pesach, i.e. that it's a mitzvah lo saseh, it's a prohibition, it's only be'achad sharecha. It's when all of the Am Yisrael is coming in through one gate, i.e. everyone's going to Shiloh or everyone's going to the Beis Hamikdash, when there's a shas isser abamos. At that point, so then if you offer a korban pesach on your own private bama, so then it will be a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. That is what Reb Shimon learns out from the pasuk of lo sucha lizbach es a pesach be'achad sharecha. And Reb Yossi, who says that you are allowed to slaughter a korban pesach for just one participant, that is what he does with the pasuk of be'achad sharecha. He learns it like Reb Shimon. Reb Yehuda, hi minale. How does Reb Yehuda know that somebody offers a korban pesach on a private altar at a time when you're not allowed to make private altars, that it's a lo sa'aseh? So tarte shmas mina. Somehow Reb Yehuda is able to learn out both of them from be'achad sharecha, that you're not allowed to offer a slaughter korban pesach for just one participant, and also somebody who slaughters a korban pesach and offers it on a bama when you're not allowed to, it's a mitzvah lo saseh. I don't know why he's allowed to learn out two things from one place. Generally, we only learn out one thing from one place. But anyways, he says that somehow it implies both. Reb Yossi mimayda tilahachi kamer dekamer Reb Shimon dilma kidekamer Reb Yehuda. Who de'asa? So how Reb Yossi could hold like Reb Yehuda or like Reb Shimon. Kilu Reb Yehuda learns out from be'achad sharecha that you're not allowed to slaughter korban pesach for just one fellow. Reb Shimon learns out from be'achad sharecha that if you offer korban pesach on a bama b'shas isra bamos, it's a mitzvah lo saseh. So how did he decide like Reb Yehuda or dafka that he's going to hold like Reb Shimon? So Amalach, Rabbi Yossi would say to you, Lo sakadaitech doksiv ish lefi ochlo. He says it can't even enter your mind to hold like Rabbi Yehuda, because the pasuk says ish lefi ochlo, that when it comes to korban pesach, it has to be each person based on what he eats. And therefore, if you have one person and he can eat the korban pesach, as long as it's a kazayis for him to eat it, you can eat it. What do you want me to tell you? Ramile Rav Ukva Bar Chinana mi Parishna l'Rava. Rav Ukva Bar Chinana asked the following from Parishna asked the following question to Rav. Mi Amar Rabbi Yehuda ein shochten es Pesach ala yachid. Does Rabbi Yehuda really say that you're unable to slaughter korban pesach for just one fellow? V'aminu, we have a contradiction. Isha barishon shochten ala b'fnei atzma, that a woman on the Pesach harishon, you can slaughter the korban pesach for her alone. Now, when it comes to Pesach Sheni, she would join together with somebody else. Div Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, a woman is chayeves by Pesach Rishon, but it's only a reshus. It's optional for a woman to bring a Pesach Sheni. And Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you're allowed to slaughter the korban pesach for a woman alone by the Pesach Rishon. Now, So Reb Ukva Bar Chinana's Parishna's question is, we just said that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're unable to slaughter korban pesach for one person alone. Yet Rabbi Yehuda also seems to be saying that you're allowed to slaughter a korban pesach for a woman alone. So what's the deal? So Amar Leit Rava says, Lo tema b'fnei atzma ela ema b'fnei atzman. Don't say her alone, say them alone. Kilu, if you have a group of women and they want to make their own korban pesach, so Rabbi Yehuda says, great, that's cool. Enjoy, have fun. But then Rav Ukva Bar Chinana from Parishna said, wait, But are you allowed to do that? Would you really be allowed to have a group for a korban pesach that is a women's group for a korban pesach? But we learn in a Mishnah that you're not allowed to have a group of women, slaves, and minors. And Rav Ukva Bachilin wants to argue that this means that even a group made up of only women, or a group made up of only slaves, or a group made up of only minors would be unable to offer a korban pesach. Amar le lo nashim vavadim ketanim nashim vavadim mishum tiflus ketanim vavadim mishum pritzusa. Says Rava, no. What that means is that don't have a group that's a combination of women and slaves and minors, because we don't want women and slaves making a group for a korban pesach together, because we're concerned that there might be excessive mingling among the two participants, the nashim and the avadim, and we don't want avadim and ketanim making a korban pesach together, because we're also concerned about too much mingling between the avadim and the ketanim, and we don't want too much mingling among the avadim and ketanim, because we're concerned that the avadim might sodomize the ketanim. Zok the Gemara Gufa, we said earlier, Isha Barishon Shochten Aleh B'fnei Atzmo V'sheni Osin Osa Tfeil Lachem Div Rabbi Yehuda. We just said a few minutes ago that according to Rabbi Yehuda, a woman by the Pesach Rishon, you could slaughter for her alone, i.e., she's chayeves in Pesach Rishon. But when it comes to Pesach Sheni, she would join together with I guess men, because Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that a woman has a chiyuv for Pesach Rishon, but by Pesach Sheni it's a rishus, it's optional. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi Isha b'sheni shochten aleh b'fnei atzma ve'en tzarich loma b'rishon. Rabbi Yossi's opinion is that no, a woman is chayeves in the Pesach Sheni just like by Pesach Rishon. So therefore, by Pesach Sheni you could slaughter a Pesach Sheni for her alone, and certainly by Pesach Rishon as well. Reb Shimon Omer Isha Barishon Osin Osa Tfeila Lacherim Basheni Ein Shochten Aleh Kol Iker. Whereas Reb Shimon's opinion is that even by the Pesach Rishon, a woman would just join together with a group of men, but by Pesach Sheni she would not bring a Pesach Sheni whatsoever. I.e., Pesach Rishon is a rishus for a woman, but by Pesach Sheni she wouldn't do it at all. That is the opinion of Reb Shimon. What's the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon? So Rabbi Yehuda savar, Rabbi Yehuda holds that b'michsas nefashos v'afilu nashim. So when it comes to Pesach Rishon, it says b'michsas nefashos, souls, and even women have souls. So therefore, by Pesach Rishon, women would be chayavos midoraisa. V'chi tema ihachi afilu b'sheni. And if you're going to say, well, right, afilu b'sheni nami, and if you're going to say, well, then also by Pesach Sheni, why should it be any different? If women are chayavos in Pesach Rishon, then they're chayavos in Pesach Sheni. No, don't say that, because ksiv cheto yisa yishahu, ish in ish alo. It says in the context of Pesach Sheni that cheto yisa yishahu, that fellow will bear his sin, ish. It says, but not Isha. Now, interestingly, in the context of Pesach Sheni, what's it talking about? Cheto Yisa Ishahu. If you have a fellow who was not Tameh or not B'derech Rechoka, he was just hanging out at home and didn't want to do the korban Pesach, by Pesach Rishon, so then he's Chayev Cheto Yisa, right? He's in trouble. So, on the one hand, it sounds like it's talking about Pesach Rishon Dafka, but it's in the context of Pesach Sheni, and it's a whole limud about how it's referring to Pesach Sheni, but the assumption for now is that we're saying in the context of Pesach Sheni, it says Ish, and to the exclusion of an Isha, of a woman, and therefore we want to say that the chiyuv of a woman by Pesach Sheni is only optional. So if that's the case, well then, then why should a woman join together with a group of men by the Pesach Sheni? Kilu, if it says Ish, so Ish, not Isha. Why should she even, join any group? So, Hanik Chochukas Pesach L'Tfeila Be'alma. Well, when it says by Pesach Sheni Chochukas Pesach, well, you do the Pesach Sheni like all the laws of the Pesach Rishon, so that kind of says that women should join in a group, but we wouldn't slaughter for a woman alone because there's no chiyuv, but there is a reshus, and she should join together with another, with a group of men. Sounds fun? Rabbi Yossi, my timer. How come Rabbi Yossi says what he says? What does he say? He says that women are chayavos in Pesach Sheni just like they're chayavos in Pesach Rishon. So, my time, how come? Dichsiv barishon b'michsas nefashos v'afilu isha. Okay, it says by Pesach Rishon nefashot, souls, and that is men and women. Uchsiv b'Pesach Sheni, and it says by Pesach Sheni v'nichusa nefesh hayimi Yisrael. Again, when it comes to somebody who just is, decides not to do the Pesach Rishon, it says in the context of Pesach Sheni that v'nichusa nefesh hayimi Yisrael, and again nefesh v'afilu noshim, nefesh includes women as well. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi says that women are chayavos in Pesach Sheni just like they're chayavos in Pesach Rishon. Velacheta yisa ha'ishahu lemutemai. Well, then, what do you do with what Rabbi Yehuda taught by Pesach Sheni, which is Cheto Yisa Ha'ish Ahu? So Rabbi Yehuda wanted to exclude women. Rabbi Yossi saying that women are Chayavos in Pesach Sheni. So what's that? What's Ish excluding? Ish in... Wait, what? Where am I? Where in the world am I? Ha'ish Ahu Limute Mai. So Limute Ka'in Mikaris. To say that a Ka'in, a minor, would not be Chayav Karis. Only a major. Only somebody who is an adult. Reb Shimon, how does Reb Shimon learn out that women are chayavos rishus and they would join together with a group of men by the Pesach Rishon, and by the Pesach Sheni they wouldn't do it whatsoever? Kilu, to the extent that if they did participate in Pesach Sheni, then it would be eaten shalol lemnuyav. Kilu, they're not required to any degree by the Pesach Sheni, according to Reb Shimon, and therefore they can't even join a group if they want to, because it would be considered, if they ate it, then you would have people eating the korban pesach that aren't actually part of the correct group. So, Ksiv barishon ish, it says by the Pesach Rishon ish, and the Gemara is going to explain, what ish are you talking about by Pesach Rishon? So, ish in, ish alo. So, even by Pesach Rishon, specifically men, but not women. Well, if that's the case, well then they shouldn't even join together with a group of men. So ahani le b'michsas nefashos l'tfela. When it says b'michsas nefashos in the context of the Pesach Rishon, it says nefashos, souls. So that comes to say that women would join together with a group of men and partake in the korban pesach that way. V'chitema afilu b'sheni nami. But if that's the case, well then why don't we say that by Pesach Sheni also, that women should join together with a group of men? So miyet rachmana b'sheni, no. By Pesach Sheni, the Torah excludes women. The Chsiv, as the pasuk says, Cheto Yisa Ha'ish, Ish in, Isha lo. It says Cheto Yisa Ha'ish in the context of Pesach Sheni, saying men, but not women. Mimai kamima'et lei. Now, when we say that men, but not women, what are we excluding the women from? If we're saying that they are not chayavos to do the Pesach Sheni, hashta berishon lo, b'sheni mibaya. If there's no chiyuv to do the Pesach Rishon, well, certainly there's no chiyuv to do the Pesach Sheni. Elav mitfela. What it's coming to say is that by Pesach Sheni, they wouldn't even join together in a group. Umay ish to come Reb Shimon. Now, when Reb Shimon says that it says ish by Pesach Rishon to the exclusion of women, where does it say ish by the Pesach Rishon? Ish seleves avos v'gomer. If it's going to say, well, it says by the initial Pesach, I believe in Pesach Mitzrayim, I think. It says v'ikhulayim ish seleves avos, that a man will take a sheep, for his household, and therefore maybe that's the ish that is excluding women from Pesach. From korban pesach rishon. But no, ish over there is needed for the teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak, to Amar, that he says in general, ish zoche ve'en ka'in zoche, that a man can accept something on behalf of somebody else, or be zoche to other people. Yeah, meaning he can accept something for other people, but kitanim, youngins, minors cannot. That's what he learns out from V'ikhulayim ish seleves avos, that a man would be able to accept something on behalf of somebody else, but not a minor. Okay, so then which ish is excluding isha from korban pesach? Vela me ish lefi ochlo. Well, the pasuk says ish lefi ochlo by the korban pesach, by the pesach rishon. So maybe that is excluding women. So yeah, but Hamid Rabbi Yossi savala Reb Shimon, Reb Shimon savala not Reb Shimon nami savala Reb Yossi. Remember earlier on the daf we had the opinion of Reb Yossi who says that you're allowed to slaughter a korban pesach even for one individual. Now we said, why don't you learn? But what do you do with Rabbi Yehuda's pasuk? Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to slaughter a korban pesach for just one fellow, because the pasuk says lo suchal zboach es pesach be'achad. So what does Rabbi Yossi do with that pasuk of be'achad? So he learns it out like Reb Shimon learns it out, that it's talking about offering korban pesach on a private altar b'shas iser bamos. Fine. So we want to say that just like Rabbi Yossi holds like Reb Shimon in terms of how he learns out be'achad sharecha, let's say that Reb Shimon holds like Rabbi Yossi that you're allowed to slaughter a korban pesach for just one fellow, which means that if that's the case, then Rabbi Yossi learns out from the pasuk of ish lefi ochlo that it's based on how much you can eat, and you can even have one person eat the korban. You can even slaughter the korban pesach for one person, and he'll eat it. And that's what he learns out from ish lefi ochlo, which means that he's not learning out ish to exclude a woman from ish lefi ochlo. Right? So me ish lefi ochlo, hamid Rabbi Yossi savala Reb Shimon, Reb Shimon nami savala Reb Yossi, va'alumi baile l'shochten ala pesach, l'shochten es pesach al yachid. That therefore Reb Shimon must be learning out from ish lefi ochlo that you're allowed to slaughter a korban pesach even for an individual. So again, where does it say ish in the context of pesach rishon that we would say that it's to exclude an isha? So Amar lach, so Reb Shimon would say to you, Im ke nichtov rachmana lefi ochlo, my ish shmamina tarte. If we only wanted to say that you could slaughter a korban pesach for one fellow, as long, since it's just about if he can eat it, and if he can eat it, so slaughter it for him. If that's all we wanted to learn out from there, so then it would just say lefi ochlo. We don't need the word ish. What do we learn out from the word ish? So then it teaches as well that to the exclusion of isha, that is Reb Shimon's opinion. Come on, Azla the Amr Reb Elazar. The Gemara wants to know, who does the following statement of Reb Elazar go like? Isha barishon chova v'sheni rishos, that a woman has an obligation to bring the korban pesach rishon, but is only optional for the korban pesach sheni. V'doches Shabbos, and it would be doches Shabbos. What does this mean? If we're saying that this is talking about the Pesach Sheni, and we're saying that a woman is volitionally does the Pesach Sheni, it's a Rishus, so then why are we also saying that it would be doches Shabbos? Why would a Rishus be doches Shabbos? That, a woman is chayeves to do Pesach Sheni as a Rishus, but Pesach Rishon, she is chayeves, and that would be doches Shabbos by Pesach Rishon. So come on, Rabbi Yehuda, that's like Rabbi Yehuda who says that a woman is chayeves by Pesach Rishon, but is optional by Pesach Sheni. Amr Rabbi Yaakov, says Rabbi Yaakov, Amr Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, in osin chabura shekula gerim shemidachtiku ba v'yivu lidei psul, that there should not be a group to do a korban pesach that is made up of only converts, because since they may not know the halachas of korban pesach so well, so they might end up being more strict than they need to, and deciding that the korban pesach for whatever reason is puzzle, and then they're gonna basically, if it's really kosher, but they're just being too overly strict and saying that it's puzzle, they're gonna make a kosher korban pesach puzzle, and that's not good. So therefore, we don't want a group consisting only of converts out of this concern. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Pesach umatzah umar barishon chova mikan ve'elach rishus, that the korban Pesach as well as matzah and maror, when it comes to Pesach Rishon, is an obligation. And then it says mikan ve'elach rishus. No, I didn't mean Pesach Rishon. On the first night, on Laila Rishon, the first night is an obligation, and then from then and on it is optional. Now, okay, let's continue. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, ba'anoshim chova v'anoshim rishus, for men it is an obligation, for women it is optional. Now, aheya kai, when we say that it is right, we said that it's obligatory on the first night and then optional for the rest. Like, what exactly is going on? What's the Reisha talking about? What's Reb Shimon talking about? What's this whole Brisa talking about? Ilema Pesach, if we say that to eat the korban pesach, so it's optional, it's obligatory on night 1, but optional for the rest of the nights. Pesach kol shiva mi'ika, what does that mean? We don't eat the korban pesach all 7 days of Pesach. It's only on the first night, to begin with. So ve'ela matzah u'maror. Okay, so must be talking about matzah and maror. The matzah and maror is obligatory on the first night, but optional for the rest of Pesach. Now, but ema seifa. But what if we continue reading in the Brisa? It says, Reb Shimon Omer ba'anoshim chova ba'anoshim rishos, that for men it's an obligation, for women it's optional. V'chileis leile Reb Shimon hada Omer Reb Elazar, does Reb Shimon not hold of that which Reb Elazar says, Noshim chayavos ba'achilas matzah dvar Torah, that women are chayavos to eat matzah mida oraisa, shenemar, as the pasuk says, lo sochal olav chametz shivas yom tochal olav matzahs, don't eat chametz for 7 days, eat matzahs. That somebody who has the mitzvah slosa say the prohibition of eating chametz also has the mitzvah aseh of eating matzah. And women, since they have the prohibition against eating chametz, therefore they have the obligation to eat matzah. So therefore, women are chayavos to eat matzah just like men are. So what's going on? Kilu, the Gemara wants to know, if we're saying that the chiyuv on the first night and then the optional for the rest of Pesach is talking about matzah and maror, and then Reb Shimon is saying that regarding matzah and maror, men are chayav, women are pater, right? It's optional. But what do you mean? Women are chayavos to eat matzah. So, Ella, rather, this is how you have to understand this brisa that kind of is seems to be saying all sorts of different things that aren't adding up. Make it add up in the following way. Ema, rather, I'll say, Pesach matzah umaror, when it comes to the korban Pesach, and matzah, and maror, barishon chova. So it's an obligation on night 1. Mikan ve'elach rishus. From here on, when it comes to matzah and maror, it's only optional for the rest of Pesach. Reb Shimon Omer, Pesach banoshim chova banoshim rishus. Reb Shimon says specifically when it comes to korban Pesach, it is an obligation for men, but optional when it comes for women, as we saw his opinion above. Well, that was Daf Tzadi Aleph of Masechta Pesachim. Let's do a review. The Daf began talking about people who we slaughter korban Pesach for, even though there's a certain suffix regarding them, such as an onen who might end up becoming tameh, or somebody who's searching for somebody in a pile, or somebody who's in jail, or somebody who's sick. So, okay, fine. Then we got into the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi of can you slaughter a korban Pesach for just one fellow. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yossi says yes, as long as, it's all, according to Rabbi Yossi, it's all about eating. As long as you can eat a kazayis, then slaughter the korban Pesach for them. If you have too many people and they won't all be able to get a kazayis, then don't slaughter korban Pesach for them. And then we got into a discussion of the chiyuv of women when it comes to korban Pesach. The opinion of Rabbi Yehuda is that women are chayavos for Pesach Rishon, but it's a rishus for Pesach Sheni. The opinion of Rabbi Yossi is that women are chayavos in both Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. Rabbi Shimon's opinion is that women are obligated on the level of rishus for Pesach Rishon, and by Pesach Sheni they don't do it at all. Chevre, that was Daf Tzadi Aleph. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Have a great day, night, whatever. Peace out.